Hello, my name's Chris, and I've been a business studies and economics teacher for around about 26 years. Today we're going to look at individual economic decision making. So, our learning aims are to understand that consumers are motivated by utility, understand what marginal utility is, and understand what a rational consumer will consume only a good as long as it provides the consumer with utility. So traditionally, economists see that the demand curve is sloping downwards. Falls in price will result in an increase in demand for a good. If there's something happens, like there's an advertising campaign, a successful advertising campaign, that demand curve can shift to the right. Price will remain the same, but people will demand more of the product at that price because of something like an advertising campaign. Or, for instance, during the pandemic, masks became more in demand and people demanded those more, although the price had not changed. Now, that assumes that the consumer will act rationally. We assume that consumers act rationally, making decisions in their own self-interest to maximize their benefit. So they'll only buy the goods if it is worth it, if it's getting in some enjoyment from it, if they're getting some satisfaction from it. In other words, a rational consumer will buy more of a good if the price falls relative to the price of other goods. So what does that mean in practice? Well, we'll go on to that in a minute. Utility is a satisfaction gained from consuming a good or service. Marginal utility is the satisfaction gained from consuming one extra unit of that good. So it could be eating one extra chocolate. It could be drinking one extra drink. It could be buying one extra t-shirt. Anything that gives you satisfaction, that extra purchase is the marginal purchase. Think of it as the margin of the page. It's that bit on the side, that extra bit on the page. That's what marginal means. So we can see here, as we consume chocolates, our total utility goes up and up and up and up. But the curve starts to bend downwards. So that first chocolate is yummy. Second one, not so bad. Third one, nice. And so on until you get sick of eating chocolates. And at some point, the more chocolates you eat, the sicker you feel. And so you're not getting any utility from eating those chocolates. So that's why this curve starts to turn downwards and actually comes back down rather than continuing upwards. It flattens out. At some point, those chocolates don't give you any satisfaction at all and actually start making you feel ill, so taking some utility away from you. So represented in this graph, we can see we start off with our number of chocolates over here. So we eat a few chocolates and our utility is quite high. But as we eat more chocolates, each extra chocolate gives us less and less utility, less and less satisfaction, until we reach the point of satiation where we're actually not getting any satisfaction at all from eating that chocolate. If we go beyond that point, then we're actually getting negative satisfaction. So that's taken away from our satisfaction. It's making us feel ill. And this is the same for all products. If I go back to that first slide, not everyone's curve will look the same. Some will be higher, some will be lower. It depends on the product and it depends on the individual. And the same for this curve. It could be flatter, it could be steeper, depending on who's eating the chocolates or who's consuming the goods. So let's have a look at an example. It's a hot sunny day. We're really thirsty. We've perhaps played tennis or gone for a bike ride, and we're desperate for a drink of cold cola. So this first can of cola here, that gives us some satisfaction. Let's have a look at that. So it gives us quite a high level of satisfaction. So we've got one can of cola. There it is on the graph. There it is on this utility. So our marginal utility is high for our first can of cola. Before we had no satisfaction because we hadn't drunk any cola, and now we're drinking our first can of cola. It's gone quite high. So I represented that on our total utility over here. So this is total utility. So this, we're going to add up all the utility we gain from each marginal unit. So that first can of Coke goes down really well and it tastes really good. Our second can, that also gives us some positive residual. So our total goes up. Our total utility goes up. But the marginal utility from that second can isn't quite as nice as that first can. That first can, we're really hot, quenched our thirst, cool us down. The second can, very nice, gives us some utility, but it's not as tasty as that first one. That first one really hit the mark in quenching our thirst. We move on to a third can. Again, it's giving us some utility, but it's dropping off now. We get a bit full of gassy cola, so it's dropping off. Our satisfaction isn't as great. And then we move on to our fourth can, and we can see our fourth can is actually taken away. 4 cans of cola, it's making us feel a bit sick, and so that falls under the negative. So up on this line, we're above the axis, so above this x-axis we were getting positive utility. We go below the line, we're now getting negative utility. So it actually takes away from our total utility, and hence we get that curved shape of our total utility curve. So as we consume more, we don't get as much satisfaction and eventually get to a negative point where that last can is taken away from our total utility. So this is the law of the diminishing marginal utility. So the consumer, the marginal utility gained from a good or service diminishes and gets less for each additional unit consumed, eventually becoming negative. So for each individual, the marginal utility curve will be different, as I've said. So if I go back here, someone might really like cola and be able to drink far more cans than this person here. So they might have a utility curve that goes a lot higher before it starts to dip down, so they can drink more cans of cola. Someone else might only be able to drink 2 cans of cola before that negative utility sets in. So these curves are different for each individual person. So remember that the utility for the whole market would be the sum of all of them. So utility maximization. If all the goods were free, consumers would retain all the goods that yield utility up to the satiation point. So you wouldn't keep buying or wouldn't keep consuming a free good just because it's free. You only consume it as long as you're getting some kind of utility from it. So if you can imagine you go into a buffet at a wedding and the food is all free, you don't just keep eating, you eat until you're full. If you keep eating, then you're going to be ill. So you reach your satiation point, sorry, got to say that properly, satiation point, where you are satisfied, you're totally satisfied, and you don't need to consume any more. If you consume more, then you're going to get negative utility, dissatisfaction or displeasure. And so you need to be consuming only up to this point. Beyond that point, you're actually taken away from your satisfaction. excuse me, because of scarcity, consumers have a number of constraints. Obviously, we have a limited income, so we can't necessarily constantly buy goods, despite prices falling maybe. We have a given set of prices, so we are stuck with prices for certain goods that we cannot shift, and that will constrain us. Budget constraints, we have to pay for mortgages maybe, car loans, and so you have a certain budget that you're constrained to actually buy goods with. And we have limited time. We can't search every shop for the cheapest price. The internet's been a wonderful thing and has leveled the playing field on prices, but people haven't got time to search every site to get the best price. So we are limited by, we are constrained by some of these factors. So hopefully now you understand that consumers are motivated by utility, and that utility falls as we buy more of a product. The marginal utility is the utility we gain from consuming that one extra good, and that will fall as we consume more of the same good. If we reach the point of satiation, we should stop consuming, because any extra goods that we take will diminish our utility overall. So a rational consumer will only consume a good as long as it provides the consumer with utility. Hopefully you've understood that. Thank you.